Hello. Hi, Tejes. How's it
What's
going?
up? It's going
Welcome to
well.
Finding Focus, a
I'm
podcast for
excited.
founders. Yeah, let's start.
Sorry, I'm so unfocused. I already interrupted you, so I definitely need to be on this and listen to this.
Yeah, no worries. So let's kick it off with a brief introduction. To tell us a little bit about Poppin and your background, where you're from, what you study, and how you started the company.
Yeah. So I was born in California, but I grew up for most of my childhood in India. Then I moved back to California, specifically the Bay Area, for high school. Um, and I started popping kind of coming out of the pandemic when I realized that everyone around me wanted to go to social events, but everyone struggled to hear about them, and people throwing them struggled to promote them. So I thought I'd build a simple app for that, and that eventually evolved into what Poppin is today. We saw a lot of early traction in when I was in high school, and I built that first version of the app. So I thought, why not bring it to UCLA, where I would be attending my freshman year that following fall. And at UCLA, just really picked up steam. And fast forward about 3 years later, after being at UCLA, we've raised about $2.4 million, and I've dropped out last year, or taking a leave of absence. My parents would like it better if I say it that way. Uh, and yeah, just focused on growing the business, launching in other schools. We're now, a full events and chats app for college campuses where you can, stay in touch with your IRL communities digitally. And we're just launching it in schools across the country, seeing a lot of success at schools across California, notably UC Davis, where it's now become actually bigger than UCLA.
Wow, that's incredible. And for the audience, what is Poppin exactly?
Yeah. So Poppin is a digital hub for your in real life connections. And what I mean by that is we feel that on college campuses, there is no centralizing social platform that actually brings people together and revolves around what people do on a day to day or week to week basis. So Poppin allows you to find events, promote events, and stay connected with your friends through chats. So you can think of it almost like Facebook events and Facebook groups that existed 10 years ago, but has since dissipated on college campuses and left consumers resorting to products like GroupMe, and like for events using like antiquated systems like wristbands or spreadsheets or Google Slides to track guest lists. So we're trying to bring that level of advancement to events and chats.
That's amazing, man. So you mentioned you started in a high school. Could you tell us about that? Have you always been entrepreneurial? When did you get, into the startup journey?
Yeah, I don't think I've always been entrepreneurial, necessarily in a business sense. I think I've always been ambitious. So I've been like very obsessive when I pick up like a new hobby or something I'm interested in, and then I spend a lot of time trying to get really good at it, or like just devoting all my mental energy to it. So when I was growing up, it was like sports, and then it morphed into stand up comedy, and then morphed into like making movies. It was always like random stuff. Um, and then I started, just going to hackathons by product of being in the Bay Area, and like just being exposed to how like at a young age, I was like 15, 16 at the time, like tech had the potential to like solve multiple people's problems at the same time, and like kind of go beyond your reach as a 15-year-old in high school or middle school. And that was just super fascinating as a concept. And again, being in the Bay Area, I was exposed to like startup talk, VC talk, and I slowly started getting interested in just something that seemed like it could become so big so quickly. And I'm an impatient person, and I'm definitely risk prone. And I think startups favor typically people who are like that. Um, so I was just interested in building things, and I won a couple hackathons and like did well in like STEM projects and whatnot. And then with Poppin, I just wanted to build something. I like didn't know what at the time. I just kind of told my close friends that I really want to build something, and the idea for Poppin just came as we were coming out of lockdown and the pandemic. It just seemed natural to me, and it almost seemed like I couldn't not do it. Like it's not like I did much. It's not like I did much customer discovery or market research at the time, but the fact that I didn't know as a at the time like 17-year-old in high school going into college, the fact that I didn't know that a platform like this or anything big like this has existed, I was like, there has to be this next big thing, and I want to be the person that builds it. Um, so yeah, we started out. I just asked a couple friends that I thought would be a good fit in helping me out, Um, and we said, okay, in 2 weeks, we're going to build this entire app and we're going to throw a launch party. And obviously, I had never built an app before because you can't build a good app in 2 weeks. Uh, but I'd already gone about like calling one of my close friends who has a really nice house. And I said, hey, when are your parents not in town? I want to throw a party at your house. And that's why we settled on the 2 week mark. Um, so we built the app. It was terrible, terrible app. All you could do is click I'm going or RSVP. And nonetheless, we had more than 1,000 people RSVP to our
Wow.
first event in like the suburbs in the Bay. Um, and it's all like high schoolers too. So like, it's not like people are big partiers or like big on social events at the time, or too big at least. But it was so big that we ended up having to throw two parties on the same night, and it was amazing. Like everyone was loving the product. People were organically using it after, and I just felt like we had lightning in a bottle. That there's just the way people were interacting with the product. There was just something magical happening. People were telling their friends about it. We barely did any marketing, just word of mouth, organic growth, and yeah, I just felt super compelled. Um, but actually, the funny thing is, the next day, the guy's dad called me and said, "Hey, like, basically, you've kind of fucked up my house. Like, we broke his German billiards table. We broke like a bed, vases, like everything. I mean, you can imagine with high schoolers and a fancy house what might happen." And I'd put all the money I'd made on DoorDash into that party. So we were pretty worried. We thought we were screwed because we're like, how are we gonna pay this off? But benefit of it being the Bay Area was he was a startup founder and an angel investor. And when we explained to him that we use an app to get everyone there and we built the app and we want to go further with it, instead of making us pay like $5,000 in damages, he actually not only forgot about it, but he gave us another $5,000 and was our first like angel check like 2 weeks into starting. And that's how we incorporated the company and got our feet off the ground. So it was a crazy start.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Literally Project X into a angel check.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the most I was so nervous going to his house. I was like just thinking of how I can possibly explain this away. And I think he just like was so compelled by the product that he just didn't care. And we're still very close, and I still call him for advice. And every time we have like a big milestone, I call him, and it's so nice to have somebody who's kind of believed in you before like anything, like so far before. 'Cause literally all he knew of me was like that I was his son's friend, and I threw a party that destroyed his house. And he still backed us, so it's great. Yeah,
That's awesome. Seems like a really cool guy. You
definitely.
mentioned that you've been impatient and risk prone. Could you tell me
Mhm.
more about that? Where do you think that comes from? Because I'm very much the same way.
Yeah, I think the impatience comes from just having a short attention span and getting bored quickly. And I'm also curious about a lot of things. So if something is not fulfilling my interest, I know like other things could be. And the fact that there's that opportunity cost bothers me, and therefore I like have impatience. I feel like um, risk prone. I thought about the risk prone part a lot. It's kind of a more interesting one. I don't know what necessarily drives someone to be risk prone. I think I definitely grew up quite fortunately and had parents like back me up. So even if I like did fuck up, like I felt like there was a sense of security, and I think that's opened my mind to being a little bit more flexible with risk because there's not as many like people relying on me necessarily, and I've had always been given the freedom to kind of do what I care about and I'm passionate about. Um, so I think it's a product of that and how I was socialized for sure. Um, and I just think it's fun as well. I mean, I just think it's a lot of fun to like risk something. I mean, nothing major, but like to gamble almost.
Mhm.
Because I mean, the more you risk, the more you reward. And like I said earlier, I think I'm an ambitious person. So I think if with any level of ambition, like the higher you go, it takes a more resistance to being, taking willing to take risks. So I think it's a combination of being ambitious and been having a good upbringing where I wasn't punished for taking risks. If anything, it was encouraged.
That's powerful. It's a powerful parenting lesson for anyone trying to breed entrepreneurs. My parents were
Yeah.
my dad was very similar. Definitely felt like a sense of security. Although there are counter examples to that as well. So I don't really know.
Yep.
Um, you mentioned that you just kind of started with a few friends that you knew in college or high school. How did you find these co-founders, and what were you looking for, and what have you learned about co-founders since then?
Yeah. Honestly, I thought I was being very thoughtful at the time, because I was reading like a lot of books about startups, and I had worked at a startup or two, I think, by the time, and I really understood like startup incorporation and like founders agreements and 83B and all the semantics. And then naturally, because I had confidence in that, I thought like, okay, with co-founders, I'm going to be very specific and intentional on who I choose and who I want to work with. I think for the most part I was, but I think at the time, like when you're 17 and 18, your network is just not as good as it will be in like 4 years. So you're recruiting more on availability, rather than like this is objectively the best person that's complementary to my skill set and the person I want to work with. So we started out with four people. The first person I talked to was my best friend from high school. We had worked on stuff all throughout high school. Um, and we're just super close. And he would always push me to work harder. And like, I just wanted to spend time with him. It was a great excuse for us to just hang out and label it as work. So I called him. The second person was actually my friend's older brother who was working on another startup at the time. And I called him because he's like 3 years older, more experienced, had like experience in startups, had actually dropped out for a startup. And I called him for advice initially. But that call I asked him when I asked him for like advice on consumer social, it actually turned out on me like convincing him to quit what he was working on and join what we are doing. Um, and he was like more like a different, he thought about problems, he thinks about problems differently than I do. And he's very open-minded, which is the most important thing to me. And then the fourth co-founder was we needed someone like who's going to be like leading the technical efforts. And I reached out to the most technical person I know, and I said, "Hey, do you want to come build this with us?" Um, I mean, obviously, it was very early then, and then since then, within the first year, within like 6 months, my close friend went to college in the East Coast, and we didn't have insane amount of traction that was compelling him to stay. So he was just like, "I'll take a step back," and our technical co-founder as well took a step back as he was going to college. So it was really me and my co-founder Miguel, who was my friend's older brother, that were like really hell bent on continuing this. And Miguel also was going to school in LA like I was. Um, so we decided to just continue from there. And we added a third co-founder again. It was one of the first people I met at UCLA. It was like he's his name is Ben. He's just a genius. And when I met him, I spent like 4 months convincing him to stop what he was working on. Um, because I thought he'd be such a perfect fit for what we're doing. And the three of us are now living happily ever after. Not really. I mean, not that we aren't, but now we're just like grinding together, and it's good. And I think we have a much better balance than what I initially started with.
That's interesting, man. I also had five co-founders officially and a couple of like unofficial co-founders, and I feel like the biggest lesson I learned there was that co-founders are the number one cause of death if you're not careful.
Yeah, 100%. I think co-founder like arguments are like inevitable, um, and the ability to resolve them is honestly a huge strength that companies can or cannot possess. Yeah, like I fully agree. I also think like when you're starting a company and you're young, you think it's a sign of higher status to have more people on your team and like more people working for you, which is so ironic because I feel like as I've matured and the company's matured, I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like the minimum viable team is like what everyone should be striving for because it's less obviously management overhead, less interpersonal conflict, and obviously you have to just pay less people and everything is more efficient. But yeah, I mean, I definitely when I started, I had like obviously four co-founders and then so many people that were like helping in like a very like random way that were like,
Mm.
oh yeah, you're in the team, you're in the team, and super grateful for everything they did, but it was just completely on me, and I think I mismanaged, expectations, um, and like should have just done a better job or been more knowledgeable, honestly, and the fact that I don't need like 30 people to like market something, right? So yeah, a lot of good lessons.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point and a very common mistake I see of founders and just anyone trying to start anything, even if it's a club. It's just to like involve everyone they know,
Yeah.
and you end up with like 15 part-time interns,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you don't realize that that's actually killing your productivity.
Hundred
You
percent,
know,
100%.
because every like adjacent person requires close management, goal setting, and accountability.
Mm.
and it drains your bandwidth. And it's so funny. I've scaled the team to like 40 people and back down to like 10, and honestly, we were moving so much faster with less people. And I don't think we've ever moved as fast as when it was just me and my co-founder Brian.
Yeah.
Like the two of us moved mountains like
Yeah.
together, you know?
100%. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to make everyone agree with their decisions. I think is also like the biggest thing. Like
Yeah.
getting everyone on board once you already make a decision is a waste of time in politics. Like if you know what the call is and you're gonna make it regardless, like keeping people happy is obviously important, but it is a time suck. Um, I think the reason people associate having big teams with like success is I think for younger founders who end up starting colleges or starting companies in high school or college, um, a lot of their like experience thus far is like signaling. It's not building some things of like tangible value, but it's like showing that it is potential value. Like I know a bunch of people start like nonprofits or like get like these random awards, and like in that case, the only way to demonstrate or like portray its success is by having like 50 people on the team or like be like I launched it like these three countries. But like startups are far more unforgiving than college applications. And the market and the quality of your product and the quality of your team will be tested by like people who are going to pay money or not pay money for what you're building. And no amount of people is going to impress anyone to a point where they're going to start using your product. So I think that shift from that mindset of like I need to have like this stacked resume with 50 people working for me and like this cool organization and this website where everyone's pictures on there and my pictures on the top, like that just completely like the inverse is almost true when you start building a company, but you're doing that like, or at least for young founders, they do that in a span of 1 or 2 years from that. So it's a huge like mental framework to kind of shift, which I definitely think I was the victim of because I thought it'd be like the company's like one of the KPIs was how many people wanted to be on the team and how many people were on the team.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of one of Paul Graham's essays. Like, it's about how school trains you to hack tests, and the best, smartest kids are always like optimizing for the test itself instead of the content. And
Hmm.
then that teaches you the wrong lesson in startups because you can't hack startups, right? And
Yeah,
so we hacked college applications by joining like every single every single club possible and stacking our resumes and just like cramming the necessary material for every exam. And then in
yeah,
startups it's like, yeah, nobody cares. Like either you know
yeah,
the right product or you don't. um,
yeah,
and that's like the harsh lesson that every founder that's been a academically successful person has to encounter.
yeah. No, definitely. Like also like the other thing is no matter how good it sounds, it doesn't mean it will work is another like lesson to me. Like things can sound
Yeah.
amazing. Even like customers or clients can be like, this is amazing. I'm going to use this. But like the only thing that speaks is like the dollar, right? If they're going to
Mm.
pay or not. We've had so many cases throughout Poppin where we've had like this about to happen or this is like going to happen and this is a soft commit and this is huge and we should celebrate this, and so many of those have just fallen through the cracks for god knows what reason. That we just like now we have a culture of like we don't even talk about things or celebrate things until like it's like signed or it's like a number that's been like hit in our database. Like it's very easy to get in that habit of like celebrating random things, or like
Yeah.
building confidence from those random things when it's just like smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. It's like from the mom test, right? Like
Hmm.
nobody will tell you your idea sucks. And
Exactly.
you could almost argue that the better it sounds, the worse it probably is.
Yeah.
Because the better an
100%.
idea sounds, it means the more acceptable it is to the typical mind, which means that it's probably been discovered at some
It's
point.
probably been tried. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
consensus.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
YC's idea of tar pit ideas, I
Hmm.
feel like is huge. I mean, like everybody tries to start like an app for hanging out with your friends or delivering something somewhere, and it's like
Yeah.
you got to be really careful.
Do you think that like did you ever when you first heard the idea of a tar pit idea, what were you feeling like? Because I know like at least broadly the description can cover definitely Poppin and perhaps Duffel as well. So I'm curious, like, because when I read it, I was like, "Fuck!" Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
no way. I panicked. I definitely had an existential crisis. But how did you feel when that happened?
Oh, I definitely felt the same way. I mean, it's not just watching that, it was kind of seeing all the corpses laid before me. You know, like
Mm,
I was reading about like Envoy Now, this startup at USC literally 4 years before I went to college that did the exact same
wow.
thing. And, um, you know, the founder's a Teal fellow and like a really cool guy. And I was just like, wow, this has really been a reoccurring theme. And then if you really trace back to history, it's like you have Webvan and Peapod and all the like early 2000s grocery delivery startups that just burned through hundreds of millions of dollars and were colossal failures. I mean, Cosmo was literally guys in New York riding bikes delivering inventory that they owned using orange helmets. Like it was literally
Wow.
like duffel 20 years ago. And
That's
there's this
crazy.
crazy documentary on YouTube called E Dreams about like
Uh-huh.
literally this Asian founder starting this like delivery service. They raised hundreds of millions of dollars and it
Yeah.
was just like a huge L. And yeah, I think watching those things is really humbling. And you know, one of the reasons I actually don't think young people should start companies. Like, I actually think you should probably wait a little bit, um,
Hmm.
and that's after having been a young founder. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, that's honestly a great question. Something I've been thinking about a lot recently, specifically. Because so I go back and forth. I think that initially I was of the opinion that people in college should start companies, like 100%. Reason being is most people in college in America like are fortunate to have their parents cover for them in the sense that like they don't have like too much of a financial burden. Of course, some people do, but
Or
majority of the
student
people
loans?
or student loans, yeah, majority of the people like can get away without it, and their biggest responsibility nonetheless is school. And I think any smart person or any person who's interested in starting a company, most people don't have too much trouble with getting by in college. I think it's like you said, it's very easy to hack and figure out. Um, and then I think the other pros of starting a company in college, number one, you are living around people who could be your potential users. You get such amazing product and user feedback that like big companies today would die for, and you have that very close signal as to what's working and what's not. Two, you're around immensely smart people, right? There's like the best place to find a co-founder almost. I feel like, I mean, college I think I tweeted once, college is a glorified co-founder matchmaking service. Like it's literally like it's the best place to find it. If you need a designer, you can go to a design class. If you need a CS major, you can go to a CS class. Like there's so many people there. And then third, I think people are at their most risk prone in their lives. Like once you go get a monthly salary after college, and once you like have like a stable partner, and then you have kids, and then you have like recurring bills to pay, like your likelihood to break out of that mold and actually start a company is so much higher. It's so much harder. That college is a time where you can take that risk. You have that time. You have the people. You have the resources to go out and try something. And I also think you have a sense of like naivete in a sense. I never know how to pronounce that word, but you're naive, like you're innocent. Like I think the best founders are a little delusional, and college students are definitely like don't have the view of the world that I feel like people who have graduated and are working jobs do, and they have a little bit of that almost unabashed confidence. And I think you need that in the beginning when nothing is logical. So for those reasons, I think it makes sense, but at the same time, like there are a bunch of drawbacks, right? I mean, majority of any founder, let alone student founders, is going to fail, right? And not that failure is bad, but failure can, if like you fail too early or you fail like completely, like there's not even too many lessons to be learned, right? You lose money, you lose time, or if you get like this, meet this threshold of success, but you're not like meeting the next threshold, you're kind of in this limbo where you need to like really commit a lot of your time, and it takes away from your college experience. You're losing an opportunity to learn a lot more. Maybe you don't know what your full interests are. Maybe you rushed into things. Like there's so many different factors. But I think where I stand now is no one should like actively like start a company for the sake of starting it, which I definitely think is part of the culture now is like, oh, I'm like 18 or I'm like at a good school, I should start a company. I think people should actively explore, like they should be ready to start a company, but they should only start it when it's like so compelling that they can't not do it. I think that's like at least the best founders I've talked to, like their stories are always almost like they were like peer pressured into starting it. Um, and I think that's the right way to do it. I still think people should build in college. It's such a good experience. I think I've learned so much more by building a startup than by being in class. And my network and everything is like a lot better. Also, I feel like because I've been building a company. But yeah, I go between both. I think it really depends on the person. I think if you're just constantly building and exploring, you should be able to start a company if you find some sort of PMF. But you shouldn't like go into it being like, oh, I want to start a company because like it's a company and I'll raise money. Like that's the wrong approach. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I think a lot of people I've seen firsthand go in with that and regret it later.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced difference. Like just to clarify, I definitely agree with everything you've said. In that, college is a perfect time to meet people and try things out. Like
Yeah.
experimentation and networking should be the theme of college. If you
Hmm.
think sitting in lectures and like listening to the same regurgitation that every other person listens to and gets the same degree for is going to set you up for a competitive edge in the workplace, then you're sorely mistaken. And so
Hmm.
that's like probably 80% of the population sitting in those lectures, and I feel bad for them. However, there's 20% that are looking for new experiences, like self discovery, and they should be building stuff. But if you go in with the mindset of, let me start a company and be a startup founder because that's what people do, like people become doctors. Nowadays, people want to become entrepreneurs, and there's like
Hmm.
entrepreneurship classes in college. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, it's kind of like the same thing as trying to be an investment banker. You're just
Hmm.
doing it for the sake of other people's perception of you, or it's not like intrinsically motivated. And the idea isn't pulling you towards it.
Yeah.
You're trying to make it happen. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to be said about like forcing it too much. Like if you're Zuckerberg and you got Facebook going and it's like growing out of control, of course, you should go build that. Um, but for most people, I think they would be well served just exploring more because there's such big opportunity cost of
Hmm.
not doing college properly, right? Like everyone you don't meet, all the classes you don't take out of
Hmm.
intellectual curiosity. And I reflect back, I'm like, wow, there are so many things I'll probably never study in the rest of my life. Like for example, I'm a huge philosophy geek, but after my first 2 years of college really going deep with philosophy, I don't think I'm gonna go that deep again.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll read a few books on my own, but it's like having that environment, having that forcing function to go deep into like Wittgenstein or Heidegger. It's like that's hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
um, but you mentioned product market fit, so I'm super curious. What are your thoughts on like finding product market fit? What do you think are the most important signs of product market fit, and
Hmm.
where are you along that journey?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, inherently our product is pretty seasonal. So like it's impossible, at least in our current iteration, to have product market fit like 24/7. And I'm sure you've experienced that with Duffel as well. I think we are starting to see product market fit across some campuses. Um, the way I would describe it is there's no like when I mean before we found product market fit and I was conceptualizing how we get there, I was thinking very numerically, right? I was thinking like product market fit, the evidence should be in the data, and 100% it should be. But I think it's honestly like more of a feeling. Maybe I'm not describing it well, but it's almost as if like this thing has a life of its own, and it's just like a disease, like it's just spreading. Um, and people are just using it perfectly, and people are using it the way you imagined. Um, I think I attended a workshop like about a year ago where the speaker said product market fit is when at least 40 or 50% of your user base said they would be extremely disappointed if your product was no longer available. And I think that's a good way of thinking about it is how replaceable is what you're building to the user. Like it could be replaceable in terms of technology, like someone else could build it and like produce it. But like in this moment, how much of an attachment do they have to it beyond just the service? Like do they feel like you're almost an employee for them solving this problem, like that they don't want to let go of? I think that's the way I've been thinking about it. And then the rest of it is in the data, like where do the curves flatten, like the retention curves flatten. um, we were talking about it recently, but like K factor and like net promoter score, like are those numbers, strong? Are people like, do people want to sell your product to their friends? I think that's another way that, you've definitely found something, is when people want their friends to be on it, not just because of the value, but they're just sharing it to share something, like it's that significant to them, like, yo, have you heard of Duffel? Or yo, have you heard of Poppin? um, I think that's how I've been thinking about it. It's kind of like a clusterfuck of a definition, honestly, but it's just like almost like it's kind of there or it's not.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is just optimizing the numbers and seeing how you can improve product and UI UX to, capture more attention and provide more value.
Yeah. No, it's funny to hear you say that because I've definitely gone through all those definitions. Like I started with superhuman framework for
Yeah, yeah,
product
super
market
human.
fit, like 40% severely disappointed. We got that. I was like, oh shit, we have product market fit. And then we went to like an NPS, like 80, 88 and NPS was like our peak. I was like, oh shit, we have product market fit. And then we were like, oh wait, it's like retention perpendicular to the x-axis, right? So like cohorting out every single user on average, was it flattening or was it slightly decreasing? And I was like, I don't know if we have product market fit. And it was like seasonal, right? And then like as the years went by and as the churn started like accumulating, I'm I'm just like, I don't even know what product market fit is anymore. And
Yeah,
if it's not like if it's not a confident yes, I think it's a no.
I agree.
And I kind of think of the Taoist principle of like Wu Wei, like effortless action. That's I'm guessing what product market fit feels like, and I feel like it's a transient state. I feel like we did
Hmm.
have it like in 2021 UCLA days, and as we've launched new markets and like less density, less like focus, I feel like that weakens the product market fit. And obviously, like the taste profile between someone in California, someone in Texas, very different. So that also changes product market fit. For us, it's like if there's a bunch of apartment buildings that's hard to reach, that changes product market fit because it's hard to deliver
Hmm.
up there. So like product market fit is really transient, and a huge mistake I feel like people make, and myself included, is being overconfident with it and taking it for granted. Like, oh, we've achieved product market fit. Check. Next fundraising. Check. like,
Hmm.
where instead it's like you should focus on it, finding focus, right? Like focus on it till it's actually so solid and never stop focusing on it. And always like dedicating 20, 30% of your time to watching that number. Um, yeah. Where do you feel
Yeah,
like you guys are at in Poppin's journey with the search for PMF?
I think right now in campuses in NorCal, like it's looking really good. It's feeling like it's natural. It's feeling like it's just moving really well. And
Mm,
I think just seeing the way people are using like our product, like is just so fascinating to me. So we have like launched a feature called Event Chat, which we launched like a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago exactly. And like when it came out, we thought it was going to be a huge hit. We thought like this is such a great concept. Like why would you not want to talk to people before you go to an event, right? Like there's so much to talk about. And nobody used it. And we were like fucking struggling. We were like how do you make people start a chat? And our first approach was, you know what, we're going to join every event and we're going to start asking questions like to prompt it. And even that like didn't really work. Like maybe one or two people would respond. Then we added like screenshot notifications. So you could see if someone screenshotted the chat, which would give other people a notification and then prompt open that because it'd be like, what did they screenshot? Like just to add like some spice almost. And that kind of worked, but not all the way there. And then we added like how many people have seen it. We've just been adding so many like micro things and removing small micro things, and it was never really getting there. But in the last 2.5 months, the party chat has been like exploding. Like it's honestly like such fun to watch because to see how people interact on the product is unbelievable. Like there's initially it started people started out with people using it for logistics. So like there was literally people coordinating rides to parties. Like, yo, who wants to Uber from like this UCLA dorm to like this place? Which I thought was funny. And then it started turning into like song requests. Like, hey, can you guys play this? Or like, is this 18 plus? Like, what are the drinks that are gonna be served? Like, can I bring a friend? Like all that kind of those questions. But now it's like honestly amazing. I got to show you sometime. But it's like it's literally people memeing each other. It's like literally like a roast battle. Um, like I saw one the other day where someone was like, it was a guy with like a shirtless profile picture saying like, does anyone want to go to this event with me? And people were just like all ganged up on him. I don't know if it was coordinated, but all ganged up on him. And not like in I don't think it was mean spirited. It was more like, bro, what is your profile picture? And like we added reactions to messages, so people were like reacting like the skull emoji and like the laughing emoji, and like people were screenshotting that. And it just goes like once that happens it just goes and keeps going, and it's just really entertaining to see. So I feel like part of PMF is when features like that aren't really driving your like the core value prop, but people are still using it because it just fits so well with the rest of it. I feel like that is also emblematic of PMF to an extent. And I think we're really finally getting the opportunity to break into that social mold. We found kind of PMF for like I think ticketing on college campuses, but that was never our vision. Our vision's always been to build a social app. So now we're making this second act, this big step from just like basic ticketing to social features, social apps. And, I think the average user in one of our schools in NorCal has about like 9 or 10 friends, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for us, it's a lot. Like for people to like add 9 people, like obviously Instagram, we're desensitized to seeing like 1,000, 2,000 people being added, but to get to even 9 is like huge for us. And yeah, it's looking good. It's pretty fun to see.
Yeah. How do you guys have like an internal metric like Facebook 7 friends in 10 days kind of thing where you define the magic moment that causes retention long term?
Honestly, we haven't figured it out yet. I think right now we just have a lot of features, so we need to probably simplify our product a little bit. So we don't have an exact count, but like there's a couple of behaviors. Like if someone buys a ticket and like texts their friend, like that's a really really strong sign for us. Like sharing something with a friend, because that's like an organic invite, and it brings a friend onto the platform, and they had a positive experience of going to an event. So I think um, that's like an interesting one.
Cool.
Um,
Well, I wanted to pivot a little bit to you personally. You mentioned that you are taking a leave of absence
mhm.
from UCLA. I took a similar leave of absence, and what was that decision like? Because I'm sure some people in the audience might be in a similar position, and it's a very big decision. Um, yeah, how did you make that leap?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a big decision, specifically for my parents and like just everyone around me. I genuinely never felt like it was a huge decision. Um, Even when I got into UCLA, and I was supposed to go in the fall, and we started popping like 3 months in. I'd like float the idea with my parents, like, what if I took a gap year now and work on popping? And that was like 3 months in. That was like 1,000 users max. Like we had no fucking clue what we were doing, but I was like willing to take that risk then. Um, and they were basically like, no. They were very blunt about it. And we, and honestly, I'm grateful they did, because it would have never gone so well if I hadn't come to UCLA and found so many great team members, and I mean, obviously, like launched at UCLA. So, um, yeah, I mean, I would just get really frustrated with the classes. I mean, when I got to UCLA, I joined a lot of organizations, and like networked a lot. I just wanted to meet as many smart people as I possibly could. Um, and I would do all right in school, not bad, but I would spend a lot of time on Poppin. And like I was just like there's many moments of like high burnout for me where I was like I physically cannot be doing school and this at the same time, and I'd call my parents and be like, I have to, like, you have to let me take some time off, I'm like struggling here. And they'd just be like, no, like it doesn't make sense, like see more, go raise money, and we'll like see then. Like that was always a thing. um And I remember it was like my second year, like end of the first quarter. I was like at a complete breaking point, and I like called my mom and I was like ranting to her like, I'm not coming back to school. I'm not, like, whatever, whatever, whatever. She heard me out. She heard me out, and she's like, okay, you ready to go back to school? And I knew it was inevitable. So I went back, obviously, and then I had a good offer at like a big tech company that I was thinking of working at in the summer. Um, but I was like, I spoke to the hiring manager, and he basically said like, when he found out about Poppin, he's like, why would you not work on this? Like, if I'm being honest, like, as much as you'd be great here, you gotta go do this. And I was like, fuck, I gotta like double down on this. So I just turned it down. And everyone on my team, I told them, give me 2 months to raise money. If we raise money, you gotta like say no to all your summer offers. If we don't raise money, go work at Deloitte, go work at Google, whatever, like wherever you guys are planning to do, go do it. Uh, and on 420 of 2023, we got into the pair accelerator, which was like at that time more than enough money for us. Huge, I mean, huge like relief.
How
And
much was it?
after it was 400K.
Wow.
And after that, my parents were, I mean, I was in the accelerator in the summer, and they were like more open to it. Um, and then this fall, the deal was, if we raise, they'll let me take 1 quarter off, and if we raise a seed round of at least $1 million, then I can take the year off. So like this fall was weird because I was living in at UCLA, or like around campus, but I was just not a student. Like all my friends were going to class, and I would just like literally sit like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. doing VC meetings like the entire day. And the team was like building and shipping, and we were just like grinding to get as much traction and grow as much as we can, because it was a terrible fundraising market, and it was about to be the end of the year, and there's no capital being deployed then. And then actually, it was your intro to 1984 that ended up being our first check, our lead investor. So thank you again for that. So in a way, you are the reason I dropped out. So it's full circle that we're having this conversation. Um, and yeah, and then my parents said, okay, I can take the rest of the year off. So yeah, I mean, for context,
Stunning.
my parents are super chill. I'm so grateful for them. They're like very, very understanding. They both are entrepreneurs, so they understand, and they definitely push me just to be academic and like work on the business. And they fully supported me like completely. Like they've like even loaned me like $1,000 when I first started, when I ran out of money to like do things. So like they've been great. It's not like it was like an argument between us. It was more of me just trying to like convince them that this should be done. And um, I think for the time being, right now, they are convinced, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you get to focus on your startup because I had dropped out for like a year, and then my dad was like, "Oh, like what about your degree?" My mom was like, "Oh, you have to get your degree," and so I was like, "All right, I'll do it for my parents." I ended up spending like an additional year of running around between classes and the consular's office trying to coordinate my credits, and spend another like maybe 50K plus just to get a piece of paper in the mail. And I'm pretty sure no one is ever gonna ask me for my degree.
But
So, there's
do
that
you
data
feel
point.
though? Do you feel that like your parents were very like happy by it? Like you know what I mean? Like, was their relief once you were done justifiable for that extra year of running around, or do you not think so?
I literally don't think, like, they're like cool. Like it's just a box people want to check in their head, like, oh, my kid went to
Yeah,
college, right? And it's like fighting that fighting that like need to conform. Some
yeah,
of the most successful people I know don't have degrees, and um it's really hard to like break out of the mold socially. What is
yeah.
like an advice you would give yourself, to your younger self, now that you're further along the journey?
I think I've genuinely been pretty good at not following like the chartered path. Like I've always been pretty independent when it comes to these things. So I think just to be present, like I've had so much fun, honestly, in the last 3 years. Um,
Mm,
Doing whatever. It could have been like class, or like cramming for an exam, or like pitching VCs, or like launching at a new school. And I think when you do a lot of those things and think a lot about the things you're doing, it's very easy to get lost in your head and just
mm,
forget how like lucky you are, and like how well things are going, and how well you can make things go. And I think for the most part, I have been like pretty present, and been like happy and enjoying it. But we've had our roller coaster rides. I mean, and there's things that have like knocked me off being focused on that. And I think I'm definitely back to that now, where I feel like super happy about like the day to day. And I think that's just to like double down and focus on that, because like obviously the business is the most important thing, and like the success of the business is like all we think about. But like it's so easy to just get wrapped up in that. Like there's so much life to live, like while working on the business, outside of the business personally. Um, and there's just a lot of fun in just being focused on it and working really really hard at it. So I think just to be focused, I mean, not to name drop the podcast, like with the
mm.
focus line, but um, just being present. I think it's so easy to get lost in it. And I still don't know. I am still unsure if I'm gonna go back to school. I honestly don't have too much left, so maybe I will. And I dropped to a very very easy major. I was doing computer science, and now I've changed it to cognitive science, which is like at UCLA, like pretty easy. So I might just do it for my parents, honestly, because like I know, like I agree. That's why I asked you. Like I know they say all this, and then I'm gonna get the diploma, and they're gonna be like, okay, great, and then I'm gonna do what I was doing
Yeah.
anyway.
Yep.
But I think
Yep.
two reasons. I think one is just like for them, just that peace of mind. Like they've done so much for me, and even
Yep.
if it means I have to like like bend my back over and like do school a little bit and like focus on the business and all that stuff, I think it's worth it. And then second thing is I also really enjoy school. Like kind of what we were talking about earlier, like young founders can like be taken away from school and then kind of like alter the course of their life. And there's still a lot going on in school. And I mean, I think I manage my time pretty well. And like it would not take away from the business. The second it would, like for this year, I knew like there's no way I could raise money and grow the business by being in school. So like there's no chance I was going to be in school. But depending on how the business evolves, maybe I can like get C's and D's and never go to class and scrape my way through. Like I don't know. I'm just keeping an open mind and just enjoying like where I am right now.
That's awesome, man. That's a great answer. Focusing on the present and having fun. Hugely underrated founder advice, I would say. Like,
Yeah,
there's so much of it that's out of your control, and the outcome should not dictate how you feel. And
yeah,
I wish I had known that when I was around your age. Like, Duffel was incredibly fun, like way more fun than I think a typical startup, just by the nature of it. I think you're in a similar boat, and there were moments where I just stressed out for no reason. Like I could have
yeah,
easily just like chilled, enjoyed it, even like invested more into fun. And paradoxically, if I had more fun and invested in having fun, the company would have actually done better rather than me stressing and pushing and forcing things. If I had just
yeah.
flowed with life and yeah, honestly, just like build more team morale, like had more enjoyable, entertaining events, and creativity comes from a place of positivity and calm. So
Hmm.
yeah, hard to understate the power of fun. I've had to learn
Yeah,
that the hard way.
yeah.
On that note, thank you so much, Tejas, for coming on.
Of
It's been an
course. Thank you for
absolute
having
pleasure.
me.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't wait to
no,
see you grow on your journey and do this again in the future.
100%. Dude, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for all the advice you've been giving me. I think a lot of the good decisions I've made in the last 6 months have been a byproduct of the advice you've given me, and it's very rare for a founder to have like a mentor who's gone through such a similar and unique, like it's so fucking unique. Like I don't know how many people have like done like such a similar path of like, especially at UCLA, like so
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for this and all that, and all that's to come.
Appreciate it, man. I'll see you in person at the office in a bit.
See you soon.
Peace.